think everybody expects that everyone's career has just had this starting point and a goal line, and it's all gone according to plan. And the reality is that I find more and more is that there's so many different paths we go on that are leading us to the next one, and you're never quite clear until you get to the next one.
We recognize genius wherever it exists. And if you're known by the company you keep, we are proud to not only spotlight the women that are part of Rockefeller Capital Management's unique network, but also welcome our brilliant audience members.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Esposito, head of Rockefeller's Enterprise Client Coverage Group, and welcome back to Genius Loves Company. Everyone has a story to tell, and we're excited to hear those from some of Rockefeller's top private advisors, investors, senior leaders, and women in our broader network about the life and career experiences that got them here and the insights and perspectives they've gained along the way. With me today, I'm so excited about, is Alex Lebenthal, once dubbed the Queen of Wall Street by Fortune magazine. Alex has been a pillar in the financial services industry for over 3 decades. Alex hails from an iconic Wall Street family, her grandparents founding Lebenthal and Company in 1925, and her father, Jim Lebenthal, creating a mass market for municipal bonds. Alex was CEO of that firm and also served as a senior advisor in Houlihan Lokey's financial sponsors group. Today, at Rockefeller Capital Management, Alex serves as a managing director and senior banker in Rockefeller Global Investment Banking, which offers corporate and business advisory services to both private and public companies, and of course, those businesses owned by Rockefeller Global Family Office clients. Alex specifically leads our efforts to connect with financial sponsors and women-led and owned businesses, leveraging her experience, her vast network of relationships, and of course, her deep understanding of the private equity and M&A landscapes to support the growth of established and emerging women entrepreneurs and connecting them with capital. Such important work, which we'll talk more about in this episode. Welcome, Alex. We're so happy to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this. And as you know, I gush over how good you are at this. So I'm just honored to have been tapped to be one of the people on the podcast.
It's really just about the guests that I'm interviewing. I've got the easy part. All right, Alex, like we always do, let's kind of take it back to the beginning. Something we often talk about at Rockefeller is the idea of standing on the shoulders of giants, with, of course, our legacy rooted in John D. Rockefeller starting one of the first full-service family offices in the U.S. You, too, Alex, have been surrounded by such influential individuals on Wall Street from a very early age. So we'd love for you to take us back. The first question I have is, at what age or at such a young age, when did you get a sense for the business that your family was in? And I love the fact, by the way, I want to reinforce that it was your grandparents, both grandfather and grandmother, which we will get to. So at when did you kind of recognize that your family was in this business? And of course, your father having been so instrumental in really taking that business to the next level. And then, of course, we want to know, at what point did you recognize that you too wanted to pursue that path?
I think everybody expects that everyone's career has just had this starting point and a goal line, and it's all gone according to plan. And the reality is that I find more and more is that there's so many different paths we go on that are leading us to the next one, and you're never quite clear until you get to the next one. But going back, we were very conscious of the business from an early age, in large part because my dad's marketing and advertising focus. I remember in high school, my dad's commercials kind of being amusing, and people I knew would talk about them. So we were conscious from that perspective. But I will say, given that we were in the municipal bond business, there was a natural curiosity about, this sounds crazy, about municipalities and infrastructure. Like when we would say, crossing the Triborough Bridge, Daddy, does the toll collector get to keep all of the money? we'd get sort of a brief explanation of debt service and how that works. I will say, though, I think when you are growing up in whatever environment it is, you're never quite conscious. You never take that step back and understand where you are. I had zero interest or expectation that I was going to be in the business. I actually wanted to be an actress. And then I realized kind of midway through college that I could see myself thanking the Academy. I really could not see myself being super excited to say that I was doing summer stock in some small town. And I kind of realized, okay, I think you're going to have a little bit more of a passion and a work ethic for what it's going to take to be thanking the Academy. And then I actually almost ended up in the fashion business, which many people comment should have been and could have been a good career path for me.
I wish this was on video. I hail to Alex's fashion sense and accessory sense. She is my icon from that perspective.
Well, I will say my fashion actually is very thought out because it actually has given me a confidence over the years. Started when I was in my early 30s and I was on the trade association board of the securities industry, and I was one of 2 women out of 30 people in the room. Right. And I started to realize, you know what, if you wear a big bracelet or big ring and loud colors, like you just walk in feeling like I'm wearing armor and I'm wearing a costume or a uniform. And so that actually is, there's method behind
I love that.
my fashion and creative
But that was
sense.
so bold and brave, because if I think back to that moment in time, I suspect if we were talking to 3 out of 4 other women, they might say, I tried to dress more masculine and like a man to fit in. So I love that you had the courage to express yourself or differentiate yourself. Like, where do you think that came from? Was your grandmother like that, or
I actually
what was that influence?
I think it goes back to my dad, believe it or not. So first of all, my dad always looked fantastic. He always wore double-breasted suits. He had fantastic neckties. So there's that fashion sense, but at the same time, I think also because my dad just walked into a room and felt like he not only belonged there, but he sort of felt like it was his role to entertain and be noticed. And I think that just kind of picked that up along the way.
Yeah.
I've never wanted to fade into the background. You know, I've always felt like, hey, if I'm the only woman in the room, that's actually kind of a good thing for me because people will notice me. So
they'll remember me. That
more.
is distinctive.
Right. But the jewelry in particular really did make a big, just, you know, again, because it was like an armor.
Statement.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But going back to your question, so what happened was mid-'80s, everybody was going to Wall Street. I ended up getting a job at one of the many long-gone firms, Kidder Peabody, and I was in the municipal bond department. And I began to realize that there was this business, a family business, second generation, and my 2 cousins were much older, neither in the business, and my siblings didn't seem to be that interested. And I thought it would be really too bad if this business just went away after the second generation. And I think in somewhat middle child syndrome, I think I felt like, well, I better do it and take care of it. And I will say, and I would suspect many of our clients who have family businesses would appreciate this, it's like a revolving door, because on the way in, you just push the doors, you just go right in. And if you ever want to leave, it's like the revolving door that's been locked at night, and all of a sudden you're jerked back and you're stuck in the building. So, you know, grateful for that. But at the same time, you know, again, that's sort of like there's no straight path. I don't think when I joined the business, I was really thinking, okay, you know, this is now it.
All right, I do want to go back to your grandmother, though, because it just blows my mind. I think about a business that began in 1925 by your grandparents, and your grandmother ran the company until she was 93 years old. I think I have that right. Characterizing her as a trailblazer is such a gross underestimation of the fact that she was 93 years old. Talk to me about your relationship specifically with her, what her support meant to you early on in your career, especially when you did decide to go the path of the family business. And is there a particular memory that stands out in your mind?
So I'll start out with a memory that is still so visceral. So when I was really little, probably 5 years old.
Yeah.
My dad would periodically take my sister and me down to the office. And I mean, it must have been a school holiday or something. There was something so exciting about going down there.
And was the office on Wall Street?
No, the office was then at 1 State Street Plaza. So right, just almost at the tip of Manhattan.
Yeah.
And we'd get there and my father would say, go in and see Mrs. L. That's what she was called at work. So her desk, which I actually used for many years, was this gigantic semicircular piece of cherry wood. And it just so happened that on the 17th floor, the view right out was the Statue of Liberty. So I'm walking in and seeing my grandmother, the Statue of Liberty behind her. And she would motion over and she'd say, come here, dear. Go over, and she'd say, she didn't call herself Mrs. L to us, she'd say, your Nana loves you very much, and I'm so glad you're here. Now, I'm going to put you to work. And she would take out her client books. In those days, your client records were all on loose leaf binders.
Right.
And she would say, these pages have torn, and here are reinforcements. I want you to go through the book. She had 26 client books, by the way. I want you to go through and I'm going to give you a quarter.
Ooh.
And my sister and I still remember that quarter. What that quarter felt like.
Just like the heft of it. It was substantive.
Yeah, and getting paid for doing something and what we were doing.
You'd get a quarter for the day's work.
Right.
You'd
right.
get.
Now, it was, a long time ago. Yeah. So, man, it'd probably be $5 today, $5 today. But that's my strongest memory of her.
Yeah.
Perhaps, obviously, because it goes back to the very beginning. My relationship with her, in some ways, has taken on greater meaning posthumously.
Yeah. Okay, Alex, take us through your career, the trajectory, kind of your rise in leadership.
So actually, I counted as 4 very different phases. So I did mention I worked at Cater Peabody. That was just my first 2 years. Lebenthal 1.0. So starting as a salesperson, getting to CEO, selling the business. That's, really my formative years, if you will. Then post-sale, stayed with the company for 4 years until we were sold to Merrill Lynch in the fall of 2005. This takes us back. Next phase was having my own company, woman-owned broker-dealer, doing debt and equity capital markets, everything from the Facebook IPO to GE Capital debt. And then, really complete pivot to working with women-led companies at Houlihan Lokey and being in the financial sponsors group there. And then, really entering a whole new realm. And then Rockefeller, going back to that, like, you never know why you're on one path. I keep joking. I finally found the place I was supposed to be. It took me 38 years to get here, but I couldn't have gotten here without the first 38.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well said. Were there any challenges that you faced early on that were particularly impactful for your career trajectory? And when you look at young women entering the industry today, what's changed or what hasn't?
So the hardest thing for me was because I was CEO when I was 31, is I looked really young. I probably looked like I was in my mid-20s. And I'm not as short as my grandmother was, but I'm 5'2". And so just feeling at times like I wasn't looked at as somebody who was consequential or who was important or who needed to be paid attention to.
Yep.
I will say also, when you are young and you become a leader, there's a lot you don't know. And I think one of two things can happen. One is you think, I can just do it all on my own. I don't need help, and I don't want anybody to see that I don't actually know what's going on.
Right.
Or you say, I better get some help.
Yeah.
And I started in the first vein, and then quickly after I'd made a big mistake, thought, okay, I have a lot of really smart people around me.
Yeah, let me tap into that.
Yeah, so I think it is having the confidence at a young age to realize you have resources around you. I think the other challenge is you feel like you don't know all the answers, and you know what, you don't.
Right, and you don't have to.
Right.
You just have to know who to go to get them from.
And I will say this hit me the other day, that all of us women still have imposter syndrome, and I still have it regularly, but I've also realized I actually can learn this stuff. I'll figure it out.
Right.
you kind of have less fear around that.
Yeah.
So going back to what's changed, what hasn't changed, we're still not far enough, clearly. There still are too many women who opt out because nobody has said your option is to be in. Nobody's reached down to them and said, gosh, you're talented. And as you grow in your career and, your family life, like, let's just make sure we keep you on
Let's
this
make
path.
it work.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the hard thing. I will say the thing that is kind of cool is that the number of people you talk to in leadership positions who say, we need women, we want women. I mean, the idea of anybody saying that
is absurd.
Decades ago.
Yeah.
And that's great. And there also is so much more of an understanding of how one can function.
Yeah.
Being a mother. I mean, COVID taught us that you can work from anywhere.
The pandemic, I think, really helped from that perspective.
Yeah, that definitely did. There are more women that younger women can look up to. So that's a huge thing. But going back to we need women, and I always kind of joke that there's just sort of this idea that if they just manifest it, the women will arrive. And there needs to be a real business plan around, you want women, what's your goal, how are you going to get there?
Right.
And I wish there were more of that. There are times when I think I graduated from college nearly 4 decades ago, and I mutter that. And if you said, what will the world be like for working women and for Wall Street, I would not have thought that we're not as far by a long shot. But I do also see so many women in leadership positions, and they wouldn't have had those jobs 15 years ago.
All right, so I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into your role at Rockefeller Capital Management. So much of your focus here and throughout your entire career has been your dedication to supporting the growth of women-led businesses. Why is this work so important to you?
Everything comes from my own experience. And maybe that's why I do come across as really genuine, because I've lived it. If I haven't lived it exactly, I've lived some version of it. I know what it's like to be on the other side of the table. So when I went through the sale of the family business, and I was the one who drove it, I was terrified. I was panicked. I cried more than I probably should have.
Did you have someone to cry to? Like, did you have...
So it's funny. There was a female banker who I still know, and I'm grateful to her, but I still didn't feel like I could have said as much as I wanted to say. I felt like I couldn't say, what is a sim? Things like that.
Right.
And so I really want to make sure, and also just sitting here thinking, I could make a decision that is the worst decision. And it's really scary from that perspective. So, that has been a huge part driving what I've done. And then the other thing is, we talked about the privilege. I think I recognized early on that I had privilege, that I got in the room because of the privilege. Yes, I was competent and everything, but I wouldn't have gotten in the room. So I always felt, you know what? It's a big room. Stick your manila blanket in the door and leave it open, because there are a lot of other women that don't have the same privilege that you do.
That access, right.
So, the way that I've held the door open has evolved over the years. And the focus on women-led companies is really making sure that they're in the room where people talk about what's going on and explain to you everything. And that you feel like, okay, I belong here. And I now feel more confident. I always say, the more you know, the more confidence you have when you're sitting at the table selling your company.
Yeah, making more informed decisions.
Right. So that's a huge part.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I'm just amazed by so many of the women of how the successful businesses that have been created out of their own needs.
Yes.
Businesses that have changed the way we buy clothing.
Yeah.
Rent the runway.
Yeah.
Real. Even going back to my grandmother, wait, there are these little pieces left over.
Right. It's Spanx giving us confidence, right?
All of that some woman said, there ought to be.
Yeah, hang on. There's a market for this.
Instead of just saying there ought to be, I know, I'll go create it.
Yeah.
And in the face, and in the face of unbelievable adversity and challenges, they keep going.
Yeah.
And get to the point where their businesses are worth hundreds of millions or $1 billion plus, or even tens of millions.
Right, right.
So it's incredible. I also was thinking about this and all the talk about, women aren't good at whatever. We think about the women at home. They're running businesses.
Mm-hmm. They're the CEOs.
They have employees. There are interpersonal relationships they have to deal with. There's
organizational skills.
Crisis management, supply chain.
Yes.
Just all this stuff. And doing 10 things at once.
Right.
So, of course, they'd be good at running a business.
Right. Oh, that is so true. I've never thought about it that way, but it's so true. You just touched on sponsors. Let's dig a little deeper there. So you cover financial sponsors. You were doing that at Houlihan Lokey. Of course, now that's very much part of your role, Rockefeller Capital Management. For those not in the know, what are financial sponsors and why are private equity firms a focus area for you and Rockefeller Global Investment Banking? And then wrap in, what was it about Rockefeller that was so compelling for your specific business?
So first of all, as you well know, in financial services, we have our own jargon, and sometimes it's hard we throw these words around. So financial sponsors, mainly as private equity funds, but also family offices, also venture capital. But for our purposes, it's really private equity. We have so many RGFO family-held, founder-led, multi-generational businesses that, frankly, private equity is the most appropriate acquirer. I think what's really important also is to not paint private equity with one big brush. It's stripping down everything and putting debt on it and selling off parts and getting rid of employees.
Not your 1980s private equity. Right.
And there's a natural inclination to still want to write that story.
Yeah.
But there's so many sponsors, private equity funds, that focus on first institutional capital. So it is that first moment that a family takes outside capital to grow the business, to transition it into its next phase. And you think about, look, you can have an incredibly successful family business, but you've always done it in your own way. It may mean that from a technology perspective, you haven't really moved the business forward. It may, it'd be a bunch of different things. And having a private equity fund that understands that you don't just acquire a founder-led business or family business and say, that's it, we're going to do X, Y, Z. Because all of a sudden, you have a really unhappy founder on your hand. So really understanding how you do create change within that business, how you get the CEO to be a part of it. And then the other thing that is also really valuable is, presumably that private equity fund does a great job. And when they go then to sell the business 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is down the line, if the founder or CEO has rolled over some of their equity, they only sold 80% or 70%, then that piece that they kept in the company, in some cases, can be worth more than they even got on the first bite of the apple.
Yeah.
So, that's really the main role. Now, as I think about sponsors, it's also like, what's our value proposition? We do have this really unique value proposition, which is really the unique deal flow from our family office clients. And then also it is the knowledge and information that we can also give private equity funds about what investors are thinking about private equity, about what sectors people are interested in. So it's always, I guess it goes back to that networking. You want somebody to do something for you with private equity. What is it that's going to make them say, hey, she or they or whoever did a good job and helped me out?
Right. So from a Rockefeller lens, what was so compelling for you as you were charting the next course of your career journey?
I think about this a lot, and I talk about this a lot, as the people who I'm regularly in meetings with will attest. So first of all, it's kind of coming back to my roots of dealing with individual investors, being back in wealth management. But in our case, we are an investment bank that is here to serve the wealth management relationship. And the banker may know stuff about the client. They're never going to know the level.
As much as the financial advisor will.
Right.
Yeah.
Keeping them informed and abreast along the way, because invariably, that's who the client's going to call.
Go to.
What do you think of this? Should I do this? I'm all right, whatever it is. So having that respect for that is really what is so unique about Rockefeller. And then, of course, overall, there is the name,
Just
which
the brand.
The brand. I mean, we all obviously we're sitting here in Rockefeller Center. It's a name we all know well, but appreciating the longevity, the impact, the foundation.
7 generations of
and
generational
also,
family wealth and planning.
Because it's the right thing to do. Doing things the right way.
I know. So Greg Fleming, who of course is CEO of Rockefeller Capital Management, has been a mentor, close friend of yours for many years now. And in the past, you've spoken about other important mentor relationships you've had. So talk a little more about the impact these relationships have had on you and your career.
First of all, I have been so lucky, and I recognize it, that I've had privilege to be exposed to people. I've thought a lot about people like Greg, and I'll say the one other person who was a very meaningful mentor of mine in a way very similar to Greg, Jimmy Lee, who was vice chair of JP Morgan, just consummate banker who sadly passed away about 6 years ago. In both cases, they were not just mentors, they were sponsors.
Yeah.
And sort of the irony, if you think of a sponsor being a person who works at your company who helps you move forward. Greg, always there to be helpful to me. When he was at Merrill, when he was Morgan Stanley, I could pick up the phone or send an email. And also, I will say something. You notice the people who respond immediately must be incredibly busy. And they respond in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whereas other people
because you're
just
not the
never
only one
find
emailing them, right?
Yeah. So that part in and of itself, I would not have gotten to a lot of places without that. I was also thinking about this, and a mentor is not just what do they do for you? What's the benefit that you get? But how does it teach you? What does it teach you about how to be with others? Whether it's just understanding, continue to give back, stand on someone, you stood on someone's shoulders, they're going to stand on yours. It's funny because I was thinking about it in preparation for this, and it kind of hit me that, it's great that Greg, made a phone call. I can't remember what it was. But what I've learned from him, and I think this is true with really important members, is you can concisely say what drives that person. And it's a lesson of how to live your own life. And so for Greg, it's because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I will say the other thing, and this is something I also learned from Jimmy Lee, is the importance of network. Not just knowing a lot of people, but understanding that it's something that you nurture, that you water, that lives and breathes. And he used to say, it's not just about what somebody can do for you.
Right.
It's what you can do for them. Yeah. And I've also realized that you think, well, how could I ever do anything that's going to make a difference in somebody's life? But you find that there are things. Yeah. So that's something that's been another really big lesson. And people do talk about my network, but to me, it's all, God, I'm so lucky to have these people. Some of them have been hugely helpful. What can I do? What can I do to make sure that they know that I know what they've done for me? And then another thing I realized about Greg, which is I've tried to live this through my whole career, how important it is to be recognized and told you do a good job, which even when you're running something, it really makes a difference to have somebody say,
how do more people not understand
you're so good at it.
I know. That just motivates people more than the stick approach or the lack of acknowledgement and recognition. Well,
yes.
And I've seen you do that so beautifully and authentically just for people across our organization. And you mean it, which makes all the difference in the world. Okay, so as I was getting ready for this, you talked about your network, which is vast. But again, I'm just going to go back to the word I just used. To me, having been an outsider looking in and kind of now being a little bit more on the inside, it is so authentic. You've got there's a breadth and a depth, but there's substantive relationships. It blows me away. And I have just been fortunate to draft off of your network a little bit. But there is one thing that you do, which I hope everyone who listens to this follows this on LinkedIn. You highlight women on a weekly basis in your network who've accomplished something great. So talk about how #Women of the Week started. What was the inspiration and what impact have you seen come from it?
Women of the Week turned into something I didn't quite expect, but here's how it started. we hear all the time, women haven't done this, women haven't done that. And I started thinking, I actually feel like a lot of women I know are doing great things. And maybe just if people collectively talked about the things that women were accomplishing, then it would kind of start a different dialogue around the success of women. So I thought I'll just recognize 3 women a week. I have to know them. Now, I could have met them at a cocktail party the week before, or I could have known them for 30 years. So there has to be some connection.
Right.
So it can be everything from became CEO, raised capital, went on a board. Believe it or not, a classmate of mine from college won the Nobel Peace Prize. That was a good one to mention. But it's also like my 28-year-old daughter's friends who got their first big promotion. And I actually love those.
Oh, I know.
The most.
Yeah.
Because I'm constantly, this is where it's turning into a bigger thing. I'm constantly trolling LinkedIn and other things because I need to have the women by the end of the week.
Right.
So let's say I'll see on a Monday, I usually do this on Friday, that, one of my daughter's friends has gotten a first big promotion. And I'm just so excited to post it because I don't tell the person before. So it's a surprise.
Yes.
And it's funny because a lot of women in general, I mean, her friends, but a lot of women in general say, my goal is to make your women of the week.
That is my goal. I was going to say it. My goal is to make Women of the Week from Alex Lebenthal. You've heard it here first. I have yet to make it.
You never know.
Well, finally, something we love to ask all of our guests. And I was thinking, why do I like this so much? And you know why? For me, it's because it humanizes people, because everyone has personal lives. And so, Alex, where will we find you at 10 a.m. on a Saturday?
At 10 a.m. on a Saturday, you will find me at my happiest place, which is our house in Long Island. It's not the Hamptons. It's a slow, sleepy little town. And I realized that my coffee is a woman-led company. My milk that I use is a woman-led product. And so I sit there, have my coffee, I have my iPad. I've scrolled through everything from all the Wall Street journals that I'm behind on to what's new on Rent the Runway. And I'm just
that sounds divine.
Just laying back, enjoying it. And then that's in anticipation of getting on my spin bike. And then I'm ready for the rest of the day. But I couldn't be happier than to be there.
Oh my gosh, you've painted such a beautiful picture.
Well, come join me.
I would love to. Alex, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your incredible story with us. I could have continued this for hours longer. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Genius Loves Company. To learn more about Rockefeller Capital Management, visit rockco.com or keep up with us on LinkedIn or Instagram. This material was prepared by Rockefeller Capital Management. The views expressed of the hosts and guests in this episode are as of a particular point in time and are subject to change without notice. The views expressed by the speakers are solely their own and may differ from or conflict with those of other divisions in Rockefeller Capital Management. This information was provided for illustrative and educational purposes only. It should not be construed as an investment recommendation, investment advice, an offer of Rockefeller investment advisory or brokerage services, or a projection or illustration of the performance of any particular investment or strategy offered by Rockefeller. Forward-looking statements, including those presented herein, are inherently uncertain, as future events may differ materially from those reflected, and past performance is not a guarantee of future performance.